Good morning. Good morning all. I was raised on grass-fed beef, Charbray and Brahman on a cattle station north of Cloncurry in northwest Queensland. Some years on, my husband Fred, toddler Harry and I live on Tumbar Station in central West Queensland. The experiences afforded to me by this Nuffield Scholarship to study and travel have been wonderfully enriching. Thank you, Fred, my wonderful husband, my rock, for your unwavering support and encouragement on this exciting journey. And of course, our toddler Harry, who was just 1 at the time of travel. I was very fortunate that Fred and Harry were able to accompany me on many of my fact-finding missions. And whilst Harry won't remember his globe-trotting, he proved a great little traveller, making it very easy for me to focus. Thank you, Nuffield Australia, for taking me on this extraordinary journey. An opportunity such as a Nuffield Scholarship would not have been possible without the support of ANZ and AACo, respectively, ably represented by Mark Bennett and Donald McGeechy, respectively. Thank you to both companies, and I look forward to a continuing relationship with you. Becoming a Nuffield Scholar is a privilege, and one that has provided me with an experience I will always treasure. At Tumbar, we background Wagyu steers and marshal them for entry into multiple feedlots on the Darling Downs and in northern New South Wales. But whilst our livelihood is entwined with grain-fed beef, we at home continue to eat, enjoy, and indeed prefer the grass-fed variety. The meat from cattle that eat only grass contains 2 to 3 times the amount of healthy fats compared with cattle that are largely grain-fed. Healthy fats are associated with reduced cancer risk, reduced cardiovascular disease risk, and lower cholesterol levels. Grass-fed beef has also been found to have a healthy ratio of omega-3s to omega-6 fatty acids, and also contain higher levels of antioxidants such as vitamin E and A. On my travels to numerous markets, it was commonplace to hear that grass-fed was sexier and more in demand than organic beef, a view strengthened not only by the perceived health benefits of grass-fed beef, but also by the corporatisation of organic farming, which has led to a perception that organic beef is less natural than grass-fed beef. This has led us to speculate about whether it would ever be commercially viable to take grass-fed Wagyu all the way to the consumer. I strongly believe that fat belongs in a healthy diet, and there is no better tasting fat than grass-fed Wagyu. Wagyu is a Japanese breed of cattle, either black or red in colour, famous for its highly marbled meat. Whilst it is true that any breed of cattle will provide marbled meat depending on the type and duration of feed, it is also true that Wagyu has a far higher genetic potential to marble. The long-fed Wagyu model achieves excellent prices for the whole carcass, with very little of the meat ending up as ground beef. The word Wagyu is often misunderstood and misused on menus, devaluing the breed. This image is from a gold-class cinema in Brisbane, using Angus beef in a burger patty but marketing it as Wagyu. This emphasises the need for a brand to not be built solely on the Wagyu breed, but to make its own unique claims that are meaningful to the consumer. I do know that purely grass-fed beef can produce spectacular marbling, much higher than other breeds that are grain-fed. This is a rib fillet off one of our 5-year-old cows fattened on buffel grass in central Queensland. The purpose of my study was to investigate organic and grass-fed Wagyu production with a particular focus on the following objectives. To investigate whether a natural, high-quality Wagyu product can be produced all year round. This would involve grass-fed or organic production. We feel it would be too difficult to provide a consistently good product all year round, being both organic and grass-fed, as this would remove too many supplemental feeding tools from our toolkit. To gain an understanding of the supplemental feeding programs, including cost of gain required for such a program, to investigate the global demand for these two products, grass-fed and organic. This involves determining the consumer's willingness to buy the different cuts of the carcass, and to investigate whether this is more profitable than conventional long-fed Wagyu production. So I explored production techniques in South America, the US, UK, and New Zealand. I also met with importers in the EU, UK, US, Japan, and South Korea to gauge interest in our potential product. One of the more interesting operations we visited was Heartbrand Wagyu in Texas. The Beeman's family business revolves around producing bulls to sell to cow-calf operators and buying the progeny back. Heartbrand Beef custom feeds and then custom kills these first-cross AACo red Wagyu for its own beef brand. This is quite a common model in the Wagyu industry, as it gives both the feeder, marketer and breeder more confidence in how the cattle will perform. However, people who buy the Heartbrand bulls are not locked in to sell their progeny back to Heartbrand, and indeed we met one breeder who sold their calf crop to Snake River in 2017. Snake River have the largest branded Wagyu program in the US and also generously hosted us at several of their feedlotting operations and processing plant. Traditionally, these brands have to pay about 10% above the Angus feeder price to secure the F1 progeny. The Heartbrand beef business is very much a domestic one, with exports accounting for only 10%, which is mainly an order for chuck rolls going into South Korea. AACo performed quite well in the feed yard, with an F1 Angus cross having a cost of gain of about 80 US cents per kilogram. Buying back the F1 feeder steer and feeding for 300 days costs approximately 1,800 US dollars. Bull sales account for only 10% of turnover, with meat sales contributing the vast majority of revenue. Heartbrand kill and market some 40,000 head per year. About 80% of Heartbrand beef is sold into food service, 15% retail, and the remainder through their website. I think there is a strong case for incorporating AACo genetics to increase weight gains in an organic or grass-fed Wagyu production system. Indeed, we met with one group, Desert Mountain Meats in Idaho, where the producers all use Heartbrand AACo bulls. It is a cooperative arrangement with 30 ranchers who breed and grass-finish F1s for sale into Whole Foods and other high-end retailers and restaurants in the surrounding area. The cattle spend the summer in the luscious Idaho mountains and are brought down into the lowlands for the winter, where the climate is far milder. In the Boise Whole Foods store visited, the product was labelled grass-fed prime rather than Wagyu or AACo. Rib fillets were trading at about a 30% premium to conventional, already pricey Whole Foods beef. Another supply chain who generously hosted me was First Light Foods in New Zealand. These guys began in the South Island with a vision to connect farmers transparently and directly with the people who eat beef. Founder Gerard Hickey started with venison and later added beef, commencing with an F2 Wagyu feedlot, which was not successful given the onset of the GFC and the lack of grain production in New Zealand. This necessitated a change in direction, and Gerard's dream was not to compete with traditional Wagyu, but to produce the finest grass-fed beef, which just so happened to be Wagyu. Like Heartbrand and Snake River, First Light provides bulls on a progeny buyback agreement. Approximately 80% of their throughput is dairy F1 cross, with the remaining 20% a Wagyu Angus F1 cross. Their target weight was 580 kilograms at 18 to 24 months. First Light have found that a 290 kilo carcass is affordable to retailers, and so they don't aim for the higher marbling that you would get in an older, heavier animal. Dairy cross F1s are achieving a marble score average of 5.2 and Wagyu Angus 4.8. First Light is able to support an F1 feeder steer price that carries a 50% premium over the Angus price, which is fantastic, but not quite as good as the price being paid for Wagyu feeders into Australian feedlots. Producers are also shareholders of the business and paid 85% at the time of slaughter, and they receive an adjusted settlement at the end of the year. My travels found that as attractive as the idea is of taking grass-fed Wagyu all the way to the producer, it is probably not the most profitable path for our business at this time. In a basket of organic foods, or conventionally produced foods for that matter, animal protein is by far the most expensive component, the centre of the plate. While organic and/or grass-fed accreditation is a great tool to extract higher value for lower priced goods and return better earnings to the producer, it could prove difficult to take a product such as Wagyu that is already attracting large premiums and try to obtain an even higher price. It may be unrealistic to expect a sufficient number of consumers to pay for what is essentially a double premium. There is a great opportunity for organic or grass-fed producers to trade up in terms of meat quality and extract 30 to 40% better prices with a 10% loss in weight gain by using a terminal F1 herd. This would not necessitate any significant change in production techniques. What I forecasted in my report has now happened: a collapse in the lower grade F1 feeder price. This creates a real opportunity for grass finishers in the next couple of years, given the market increase in lesser quality conventional cattle that have been joined to Wagyu bulls. There is an oversupply in the F1 market, which, coupled with very high grain prices, means that grass finishers can access these surplus cattle at the same price as commercial flatback cattle. This means you could potentially build a grass-fed program where it was impossible 12 months ago given relative pricing of animals, and there would still be a healthy margin in it. This price imbalance will not continue in the long run, as F1 producers will most likely go back to traditional breeds unless they can gain a premium for the reduced weight gain. JBS's ultra-premium Little Joe brand is a subsection of its Great Southern grass-fed program and carries a minimum Ausmeat marbling score of 4. From our experience, grass-fed F1s would hit this target in far higher proportions than any other breed. This product is performing very well in the marketplace and would be a direct competitor. For graziers already producing full-blood or purebred animals, I don't foresee additional premiums available that would compensate for the substantial increase in production costs and/or loss of marbling consistency in transitioning to a grass-fed or organic program. Although feedlot entry prices have fallen due to increased supply and exceedingly high costs of grain, they are still very strong. Grass-fed Wagyu, on the other hand, has a lesser degree and consistency of marbling, with some cuts faring better than others. I have no doubt that you could be very well compensated for the loin cuts, but it would be a struggle to achieve any substantial premium for the non-loin primals. This again emphasises the real value of the long-fed Wagyu model, its ability to achieve excellent prices for the whole carcass. Interestingly, in countries all around the world, I found affluent consumers who had not even heard of Wagyu beef, let alone tried it. The way I see it, the global market for Wagyu beef is not mature. It is still experiencing rapid growth. It just hasn't grown as fast as the supply of Wagyu feeders has in Australia. Where there may be an interesting opportunity for grass-fed Wagyu in these production systems is with the byproducts, i.e. cull Wagyu females that have been taken out of the herd for age, type or pregnancy status reasons. I believe the Wagyu breed will be a highly influential breed like the Brahman breed was in the 70s, and that most composite breeds of the future will include a percentage of Wagyu blood, depending on the target market. Beef wholesalers are very interested in unique beef brands and love the story of Australian, family-owned and run grass-fed production. There are certainly opportunities for those who are passionate about taking their product all the way to the end consumer. To be successful, these brands will need to be consistent, reliable, and offer a niche value proposition. Luxury beef can offer exceptional value at premium prices if it is of unparalleled quality. That is, it cannot be found anywhere else. In our business, we are already geared towards purebred production and feel for the time being there are more gains to be made by improving our product and productivity than stepping out of our area of expertise. For anyone considering grass-fed or organic production, I would recommend the following. Conduct a trial to investigate the performance of grass-finished purebred NF1 steers. This should be analysed against selling these cattle to feedlots between 350 and 450 kilos. Ground truth the costs and benefits of the different supplemental feeding regimes outlined in my report by running a trial on your property. Investigate the performance of full-mouthed cull cows. Align with like-minded producers and processors in formal supply chains to create authentic brands that provide value. This is the best way to align interests and ensure all parties are profitable and not seeking to profit at each other's expense. Fiercely defend and promote Australia's clean green image. Australia will never be a low-cost producer, but we do have an international reputation for producing the highest quality beef, which we must safeguard and augment. When starting a premium branded beef product, start small. You could buy back certain cuts from the processor rather than trying to find a whole, home for the whole carcass from the outset. Maintain scarcity rather than oversupply. Achieve consistency and year-round supply. Delivering full sets is a great way to start a program, but to extract the greatest value, each cut needs to be sold to the highest paying customer. Markets value cuts differently, and it makes sense to take advantage of this. To ensure year-round supply, consider agistment and leasing options, as purchasing additional land in different climatic zones may be financially prohibitive. Really tell your story. Consumers today want to know the provenance of the food they eat. It is easy to forget what a wonderful story grass-fed and organic beef production has in Australia. In every country I visited, importers and consumers were amazed by the images we often take for granted in the Australian bush. Know your end customer first and prioritise your consumer, not your product. Thanks very much for your time. It is my hope to have provided some insights for Wagyu and wider beef producers.